Hi, I'm Susie. Welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass Workshop. My workshop is on productive skills. Super stuff. Thank you, Janice. Oh, okay. So yeah, thanks for popping some questions in the chat box and then moving them over to the question and answer session. A couple of really interesting ones. And if you've got anything to say, then I'd be delighted if you put your hand up and you've got something to contribute, because obviously if you're a practicing teacher, you might have ideas and suggestions for yourselves. I think one of the things that was interesting, people were talking about trying to make writing more. Should we talk about the reflective questions first, rather? Am I getting that the wrong way around, Janice? So the reflective questions of do students enjoy role play and the
Yes, yes,
challenges
please
of
go for the
teaching
reflective
writing
questions.
online. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the reflective questions first. I don't know if you are familiar with role play, if your learners love role play or hate role play, or you as a teacher, how do you feel about doing role plays? But let's just get some ideas from the participants about different aspects of role play. Do you enjoy teaching it? Do your students enjoy doing it? Why? Why not? Who wants to contribute? Oh, there we go. I can see something from Darren.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Hi, Darren.
Yeah, I love role play. I think it is usually very successful. The only time I've struggled is that sometimes you get students who really don't like it for one reason or another, and then you have to kind of manage the class around them. So that's my little point.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The classroom management's really key there, isn't it? And also, depending on the kind of people that you're working with, if they're adults, we have to kind of allow them some responsibility for themselves. I think if they're kids or teenagers, they normally will just get involved and wearing a mask, or having a dressing up box or something similar of different hats, or getting the students, if you're working online, to create things on paper and just sticking them on their head, just so they've got this kind of like mantle of pulling on a role, so they're really not working as themselves. That can be really effective sometimes. I've had that experience with quieter students who, if I ask them to choose a persona to play a role play in, that persona is much more confident or much more dramatic or much more full of exaggerated motions, for example. So definitely I think I'm with you that Darren, that role play can be really fun and can work really nicely in a class. Do you think as well that the teacher's enthusiasm in selling the lesson is a bit of part of that for the students?
Yeah, I think so. Children, well, I mean, students in general, you're kind of, when you're teaching, you're actually in a role of some kind anyway.
That's true.
And so you can quite easily start to over dramatize that as a kind of prompt to the students.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a positive thing. I think as a teacher, you're modeling not just the language, but also behavior. So I think if the teacher is happy to sometimes make a fool of themselves or make themselves look a bit silly, it's kind of giving the class permission to do the same. So I'm often a fan of a bit of drama in the classroom, just because if you let yourself go, that kind of allows the students to sort of say, oh yeah, okay, then it's okay to be loud, or it's okay to be silly, or it's okay to be a little bit over the top. Why not have some crazy chaos in the classroom now and again? Not all day, every day, but I think, controlled chaos is often quite a nice thing to have.
All right.
Thanks, Darren. I'm sure I'll speak to you again later. You had a couple of questions coming up. Anybody else want to contribute about their thoughts and ideas around role play?
Yes, we have Bartolo.
Super. Hi, Bartolo.
I wanted to suggest an activity that is very popular on my experience, that is pretending to be in an island and then imagining to bring with you three elements, three objects, and then we talk about that. And I think it's very popular in a live class because we put the student in circles. Now, the problem I have when I do this game on Zoom is that I can't put them in a circle, and it's very difficult to let them participate. So do you have any advice on body language and how to play with the position of the students in order to um, encourage them.
Maximize their experience. Yeah.
So the fact that we can't use on Zoom, we can't use the space. I think it's a very big struggle for me.
It's true that you're not together in a physical room, but the breakout room function, I think, can have some uses. So instead of all being together in one circle, depending on the number of people in your class, you might just have, 2 breakout rooms with 6 people each. So that there is still a chance for discussion, and the students are kind of like, together in a group in one sense. But of course, it's just the reality of the situation is we are limited. I think, but this is where you can maybe get a bit creative and say to your students, if you've got like pen and paper to hand, maybe you can draw what you need, maybe you can show us what you need, maybe you can send them off onto the internet and they can come back with like little pictures with what they need. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Padlet, a little online thing that you can have a little play with. I'll just pop that in the chat box. So if you're using Padlet, it's kind of like a whiteboard, if you like, that students can stick things on. So you can create a Padlet link and say, right, okay, this is the board that we're all going to stick our island items on. And then when the students click on the link to Padlet, they see like a little box, and they've got the option of leaving a comment, or they've got the option of finding a picture. So that's a little bit sort of like, instantaneous. And gives more of a sort of a spontaneous feel that you might be looking for if they've got a circle with ideas popping up from different people. So you might want to try that. Oh, that's good. So a couple of people are saying, yeah, they've started using Padlet. Zoriana, is that the right way to pronounce it? Could you maybe give us your ideas about Padlet, Zoriana, or how you use it? Would you be happy to do that?
Have just started using it, to be honest with you, and basically we used it in the discussing films, giving the film reviews, sharing with the classes via Zoom, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because all the students could write at the same time, and they could see each other's writing, and then we had a lovely discussion in the class. Online.
Yes.
Online. Afterwards, and the students were even able to there is such a feature there, actually, as I have found out, copy and paste the images, and you can also even record yourself on Padlet, which we haven't tried yet. Mm-hmm. So it was brilliant. It was I would really like to explore it further and to continue using it. It's just that it's not free.
Yes.
And regarding play roles, what I found was it's challenging. It's not easy to set up if you want it to work, and the preparation is the key. And you have to do lots of practice beforehand to practice the language, to practice the word order of the questions and the vocabulary as well, mm-hmm. And the functions as well. Let's say if there's a role play of inviting and suggesting inviting somebody somewhere out, or then refusing, the language of accepting, the language of refusing, and giving suggestions, let's say.
Yeah, that's really key. I would definitely agree with that point, Zoria, that
yes.
Zoriana, sorry, that the preparation is really, really key, and that's why the framework for the speaking skills lesson just builds in that thinking and prep time. If it's a higher level, it may be that they don't need the teacher's input so much. The thinking and prep time can kind of be intertwined. But if it's a lower level, then certainly the brainstorming, the thinking time, then writing some questions and practicing saying the questions, that would all come together in the prep time. So that could be a chunky length of the lesson if you're working with lower level. But yeah, I'm glad that you've started using Padlet. Me too. And I think this online techniques and tools, it's still new for a lot of us, and we're all trying to discover various functions and features of things. But I think Padlet's the closest thing to kind of like a real-time discussion that you can get, where everybody can like participate at the same time. So it's good to know that other people are out there, having similar experiences. Great. Was there anybody else, Janice, who's got their hands up, something to say for that particular question?
Not at the moment.
Okay, super. So let's move on then to the writing reflective question. So the challenges of teaching writing online. I think certainly for me, the biggest challenge is monitoring. In a physical classroom, I can walk around and I can see, because I can read everybody's handwriting, and I'm quite experienced, so I can read upside down as well. But obviously, when they're doing writing in a Zoom class, unless they're doing it on screen, it's quite difficult for you to be able to see what people are writing and be able to monitor quite as effectively. So yeah, that's quite a challenge. So what are your thoughts or feelings about online writing?
Anyone put your hand? Okay, 1 second. Michael.
I
Hi, Michael.
only
I can
have
hear you perfectly.
hi,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, good. I only have one-to-one classes, and they're all but one. They're all adults except one, um, and I found that it's not doesn't work very well if I try to get people to write during class.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't gone over very well, and I found that once you get people to write once, they're very enthusiastic to do it again. But getting people to write the first time is
That's the
difficult.
challenge, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think this alludes to something I saw in the chat box earlier as well about, sometimes students might find writing boring. I think that's where the framework is really important for me. I'm not just putting my student on the spot and going, write about this. I think, as Oriana mentioned as well, it's all in the prep work. So it may be, depending on the practicalities of your situation, I find that it's quite common for me, if I'm using the writing skills framework, that we'll do the reading of the model, we'll do the genre analysis, we'll come up with some ideas of brainstorm. I'll set the question, but then the writing itself, I allow them to do at home, because it might take different people varying amounts of time to do different things. But I do think that once they've had that experience of writing and they've had the follow-up and the feedback, then students can immediately understand the value of what you're doing together. And writing in a group can be quite supportive as well. You can put your students in little breakout rooms of 3s or 2s, or if you choose to, you can keep them all together in a main session. And sometimes, depending on the learners, I often play like a little bit of classical music or just instrumental music. Spanish guitar is one of my favorites, actually. Just playing a tiny bit of music really, really quietly in the background, just to kind of help fill that silence. Some people, don't like to listen to music when they're writing, so I never use music with songs and lyrics and words, only ever classical music, just so that it keeps the brain occupied while the silence is there instead. So yeah, again, on Padlet, that's something that they can do collaboratively, because that can be done in real time as well. So it's something that you might want to have an experiment with. Google Docs as well. Google Docs will be less picturesque and colourful, but there are certainly ways of getting the learners to do things together. And then, you'll have to decide as the teacher whether collaborative writing is the outcome, or if you are still set on having people contribute individually. And I think there's something to be said for both. With your adults, you can make your aims really clear. Obviously, if they're working towards an exam, then that's their motivation. If they're, having one-to-one lessons, then you might want to say to them, look, your listening skills are brilliant, your speaking skills are brilliant, your reading skills are getting there, but your writing skills are quite low. So let's do a little bit of writing just to kind of get them up, so you've got, a similar level for all of your English skills, not just what, we in the profession call a spiky profile. So I think with adults, you can be honest about why you want them to do some writing. And it's great to hear that David just said that once they've done it once, then they're kind of into it. And I think as well, this is a good point to address. I think it was your question, Darren, about the pictures of real versus imaginary people. Of course, there's absolutely no reason why you can't use real pictures of real people. Depending on where your learners are coming from, they might all have, sporting heroes, or, somebody they follow who's an inspiration to them. And not everybody from every culture might recognize or know who the people are that they're talking to, but that hopefully will be more incentive to get them to ask questions to find out, who is this Colombian politician that I haven't heard of, or who is this, Iranian poet that's your inspiration. So definitely, I think, using real people is absolutely fine, and can be motivating for some, not for everybody.
Yes, thanks.
Hi. I just posted a few things in the chat regarding collaborative writing. That the Padlet is great for collaborative writing as well. So as the students can see each other's writing, if you want them to. But if you don't really want them to see each other's writing, you can disable this. There's such a in settings you can disable it, and after the students have finished writing, you can let them see everybody's writing. So basically it's a good thing that I've just found out. I haven't tried that yet, but it works brilliantly. So I just attended one seminar, and it was demonstrated during that session, during that webinar. So that's just one of the ideas. But definitely writing is the most challenging online, and it would be great if we could get some more ideas how actually to how to teach writing, how to monitor, how to engage them in writing, mark writing as well. So I think this is the most challenging
Definitely.
skill.
And I think, thanks for that, Zoriana. It's good to know that, people, because this is how I think, I don't know about you guys, but it's my contacts in the teaching community that are alerting me to different things, like Padlet, for example. So sometimes it's, techie people get really involved in trying to discover things. My issue is like the online stuff. There's so much online, it's difficult to know what to select. So yeah, I think Padlet's definitely a fun one to play with. In terms of marking writing, there's no easy way to mark writing if you're in a Zoom class. That normally is something that for me just takes extra time. If it's a physical class, I can write I can monitor and mark as the students are writing. But on Zoom, it's just, or on any kind of online platform, it's much more challenging to do that. So I normally have to wait until the students have completed the writing and then emailed me the document or screenshotted the whole thing, and then marking that in a separate time frame. If I had 10 students in a class, unlike in physical time, I would be unable to mark everybody's writing online, and that's just a physical fact for me. So if people do have hints and tips, then please do share them for all of us. That would be really great to know.
Yeah, perhaps we can move on to the Q&A.
Okay.
There's quite a few questions.
Yeah, there are, aren't there? I'm glad that you found the video interesting to ask some questions. So there was one that says, how can we make sure that we've got an effective, meaningful speaking lesson that makes the students feel they've learned something, as opposed to having a speaking lesson for the sake of speaking? So I think that's quite an interesting one. And I think for me, it's all about that aim or that outcome or the stimulus, if you like. So as a teacher, when you're planning your lesson, you might have the aim of developing the learner's fluency. So they're going to be speaking for, between 5 or 10 minutes, for example. But the outcome from the student's point of view would be, being able to have a conversation about my grandmother, or being able to talk for an extended amount of time about, my best holiday experience. So if you are using the speaking framework suggested, then the stimulus for speaking is the outcome for the student. So that's hopefully what they feel they've learned. They've got some vocabulary that comes in that brainstorm time just before you give them the stimulus. Which is, really, really helpful. And again, you can have them work together in breakout rooms to generate vocabulary, or if you know that the imagination and creativity isn't their strongest point, then you can do that as a teacher-led session. And if you have got a couple of creative students, that's absolutely fantastic. They're the ones who can go mad. And just, get a little bit inventive with whatever they're talking about or writing about. So for me, that answers the question, that the motivation, the stimulus is the aim for the students. Hopefully that makes sense to you all.
Yeah,
This,
so, yeah.
sorry, Janice, go ahead.
Sorry. So please go on with the next
Okay,
question.
super. Yeah, Bartolo's got an interesting question, and I'd be really interested to hear from all of you attendees about this one, if you're experienced in working with younger learners. So spelling out and numbers are some of the common things that people have to write things down. And Bartolo is saying things like, telling your address and your telephone number. And this is not a lack of a knowledge, but brain laziness. So Bartolo's question is, are there any exercises we can do with young learners to improve their brain activity? So I have to hold my hands up and say that young learners is not my area of expertise at all. But I would imagine that maybe using flashcards and doing sort of like little fun memory games might be something that you could try. That maybe you show like, 2 flashcards in quick succession and have them have a little race or a competition to try to remember or write in the chat box what they just saw. It could not only just be, numbers of telephones and addresses, maybe flashing up pictures of animals or people doing various activities, and then have them write in the chat box, a clown on a bicycle, or, a green and red cow in a field, or something silly like that. Does anybody else have ideas about using brain activities to motivate younger learners? Who works with kids amongst you all?
You can raise your hand.
Nobody got ideas? Oh, I think Michael's got a hand up just there.
I've just got one young student, so nearly everything I try to do is to get her to keep her animated, because I'm not a parent, so I have absolutely no idea how to talk to children. So I kind of, yeah. And so I look for ideas wherever I can that just I'm sure I'm going to use this in the wrong way, but something together, doing something rather than trying for me to try and we do grammar and things like that, but at least part of the class I just have to get her animated. And so if it's picking out the odd one out, sequencing, just talking about diagrams that you can see, anything at all that gets her to, is because we're only on Zoom, so to get her as active as I can given the obstacles of Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you've downloaded any interactive whiteboard software, but Active Inspire is the one that I use, and that has a load of different activities already on there of things like Pelmanism, the memory pairs game, where you've maybe got like, 4 cards in a row, and then the student has to sort of like, turn over this card and this card and try and find matches. So this kind of thing, might be quite nice for engaging the brain and working on their memory skills as well. Zoriana was just saying, is it free? Students not having the software and low IT skills. Again, yeah, these are some of the challenges that the reality of working online. It's well worth, I think, spending time with your learner on just walking them through whatever online platform you're using. So showing them how they can raise their hand or how they can show reactions, making them understand what the purpose of the breakout room is and the procedure they have to go through. Setting up behaviors in the same way that you would in a physical class. It's more challenging, obviously, if you're all together in a session on Zoom, because if you've got 12 people, they can't all be having a conversation simultaneously. People do have to raise their hands, but I don't see that as any different from just setting up ground rules that you would in a normal physical class anyway, of things like mobiles off or don't interrupt other people. So I guess, yeah, we're all just finding our way. Sorry, Gabby, write the name of what in the chat box? Help me out there.
That interactive whiteboard.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'm sure there are many others. And I think, like a lot of things, you might be able to get the basic functionality for free. And then obviously if you choose to upgrade, that's when you get access to all different kinds of things. But the IWB, oh great, thanks for that, Zoriana. So we've got a suggestion about WordWall as well. So again, one of the nice things about a masterclass like this is if people are experienced practicing teachers, there's a wealth of knowledge and information out there that might be different from my pocket of knowledge for sure. Okay, so I've got a question there from Darren. So he's talking about with saying that the most difficult aspect of speaking is with feedback. So you can usually only skim the surface of this type of lesson. So I'm interested to find out more what you think about that, Darren. Could you just say a bit more about that?
Here we go.
Hi.
Yeah,
yes, you're live and speaking.
Yeah. So I mean, with that, the type of speaking lesson that you kind of went through, where you have these pictures and the students are actually producing quite a lot of language. At what point do you give feedback? If you do it during the lesson or while they're speaking, it kind of interrupts the flow of the lesson. If you leave it to the end, it's often difficult to actually to tie them back to something that you focused on, but they've probably forgotten they've even said it.
I think for me that's down to your monitoring as a teacher.
Yes.
As I mentioned, at the end of both a writing and a speaking lesson, for me, feedback comes in two halves. So there's the content feedback where you're acknowledging the conversations that they had, talking about, the lady's crazy glasses or the guy's use of, chopsticks for noodles or whatever. And then once we're done having the class discussion, or sometimes I get, students to report on the other people they were talking to rather than monologue about themselves. But normally when I've got the feedback to language, it's normally tied back to something that one of the students said. Or, the great thing about doing that kind of feedback is it's anonymous. So in a writing lesson in particular, when your students are still in the breakout rooms, just coming to the conclusion of their conversations, you can give them the heads up of maybe they've got 2 minutes left, and then you can just prepare on a Word document or on your IWB screen, maybe just like 5 examples of language. So typically I would choose 5, 3 errors and 2 examples of where language was used really effectively. And then when I bring them all back and we've done the content feedback, I would then show them my whiteboard and say, you did a great job when you were speaking. I heard a couple of little things that maybe you can now self-correct. So take a look at the board, and I always invite my students to see if they can correct it first, because I find that 9 times out of 10, when they're looking at that mistake in its physical form, the error kind of jumps out at them much more than it does when you're speaking and the words can't be seen. So yeah, do try to make a link back to something that the students had said, just to start off, your first line of error correction, just to jog their memories. And even if it doesn't jog their memories, I don't think that's a massive problem. You can just say to them, you made a mistake with the present perfect. Come on, guys, we've studied this before. Have a look. Who can tell me the mistake? So you can use your relationship with your own students to kind of tie that all together, my belief anyway. Does anybody else have any contributions about doing error correction like this? Or do you spend time on error correction, Darren? Do you actually budget, 5 to 7 minutes to deal with language feedback?
I usually budget about 5 to 7 minutes, but I still find it very difficult in that amount of time to make best use of it. That's the thing. Identifying a mistake in one sentence may not be helpful for all of the students. So it's kind of prioritizing, and in an ordinary kind of classroom, you don't really have very much time to analyze each sort of error and decide which ones are the more important. So
that's true, yeah. But I do think that's the whole beauty of a speaking class sometimes, that it's a bit less constrained than your typical vocabulary lesson or grammar lesson or reading lesson. You know, in the reading or listening lesson, this is the text they must adhere to. In a grammar or a vocabulary lesson, you know, this is the target language they have to focus on. I think it's quite nice that a speaking lesson can be much, much freer. So of course, the danger of that for the teacher is the errors could come from anywhere. But, you know, pick your battles. Depending on the level that you're working with, you might just want to pick out something that's a typical problem for that level. So if I'm working with pre-intermediates, past simple and present perfect, for example. If I'm working with higher level learners, maybe somebody mangled a third conditional or didn't quite get the form of the future perfect continuous correctly. So I think from a trainer to a teacher, I would say, you know, don't sweat the small stuff because they get lots of error correction at lots of different points in other lessons. I think the speaking lesson is all about fun and fluency, and then your feedback doesn't have to be deep and meaningful. It can just be skimming across the surface, and for a speaking lesson, I think that's a-okay.
Right. I think there's another question from Marjo Seppa.
Is that about the WhatsApp group?
Yes, correct.
Yes, so that is a great question. So thinking about writing, could a WhatsApp group monitored and administered by the teacher provide another form of short communication? I think WhatsApp groups are brilliant. As a teacher and a trainer, I choose never to get involved. You might have a different relationship with your students, or you might have a specific work phone that you use that is allowed for this time and that time. For me personally, I encourage my students to have a WhatsApp group, absolutely, but it's not something that I take any part in because my work-life balance is really important to me. So what happens in the classroom is classroom time, and what happens out of the classroom between the students, I've got no interest in because I'm not paid for it. So that's the harsh fact of life, I'm afraid, Giuseppa. But my take on that is, you know, if that's what you as a teacher want to do, then, you know, go ahead with my blessing. But for me, there has to be a limit between, you know, here is my teacher space and here is my personal space. And for me, WhatsApp crosses that line. So I do have things like a class Facebook page, and I've got like a Susie Selter teacher page, but I won't do WhatsApp because it's real time and my time is important. Yeah, I like that, Bartalo. Hard, but just. That's often one of my, like, firm but fair. So I think WhatsApp is a personal choice. My personal choice is I don't use it with learners. I keep that relationship professional and separate.
Right. Perhaps one more question from the Q&A.
Okay.
I think someone has raised their
Oh,
hand.
yeah, I can see Giuseppa who asked the question. So, yeah, it'd be great to see what she believes.
Sorry, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you ever so much for your for your advice. I've never used it personally. I've never used it. I see your point. I can see that it could interfere with other things, with other matters, and I can understand. But because I say that because sometimes when we have groups that only stay for 2 weeks, it's just a way it's to help them to interact more often. Because they are students from different nationalities and more for themselves, that perhaps the benefit is not as beneficial for the teacher as you mentioned.
I just think for me personally, that there needs to be a limit. I think technology is amazing. You know, we've got this global pandemic, and yet we're all able to have this incredible experience together of listening and hearing about people's experience from all over the world, from different countries. So I'm so thankful for Ring Central and Zoom and IWBs and things like Padlet, because without them, you know, learning just couldn't take place. So I know it's different, but I'm grateful that we have got alternatives. And I think just for me personally, you know, that WhatsApp is my line. That if it was in a physical classroom, I wouldn't be giving students my telephone number. So in a virtual classroom, I feel exactly the same way. And I do think that one of the issues sometimes with 21st century tech is that people expect you to be available, like instantaneous, now, I've got a question, I want it answered. But I'm always very, very clear and direct about protecting my work life from my personal life. I love my job. I'm so lucky that I get to do what I do. And when I'm in my job, I'm fully present and I'm fully engaged, and you can have all of me. But, you know, when our time is up, then I'm going to gently close the door and wish you goodbye till next time. But my time is my time that I protect quite fiercely.
Thank you ever so much. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone. And also Susie, it has been a very, very informative session. So I hope all of you enjoyed it. And once again, thank you, Susie. And if you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the forum. And then this is where you can share with other colleagues, other teachers all around the world and other members. To receive your certificate for this workshop, you will need to complete the lesson quiz on the lesson page. The passcode is skill class. I also put it in the chat box as well. And our next session is going to be next Tuesday, elicitation in the classroom with Rachel Rowland. It's at 3 o'clock as well, GMT. Don't forget, if you like our workshop, please leave your review on our website. That's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for your participation.